The film starts with a bus transporting several prisoners to Arkansas State Wakefield Prison. Henry Brubaker, our protagonist, is among them. During the journey, they pick up an injured prisoner who was shot while attempting to flee. Upon arrival, the new inmates undergo procedures such as head shaving and receiving fresh clothes. However, it becomes apparent that prisoners must pay to have their hair cut as they desire. Following the change of clothes, the fresh inmates are allocated beds depending on the amount of bribe money they possess. Those with more wealth receive superior food and can engage in activities, whereas the impoverished ones are left with scarcely edible meals contaminated with worms. In a particular instance, a prisoner named Huey demonstrates his authority by instructing his associate, Eddie, to assert dominance over the new arrivals. They compel another inmate named Bobby to the bar and subject him to torture in front of others, despite his innocence. This exemplifies the prison's corrupt and abusive power dynamics. The following day, all the prisoners gather to witness the punishment of two inmates who were forced to stand on a bottle, serving as a stark reminder that defiance is not acceptable. Subsequently, they head to the fields to toil throughout the day. Additionally, the inmates are compelled to sell their blood to the prison doctor in return for money they can spend while incarcerated. Moreover, they are coerced to labor in a lumber mill owned by a local entrepreneur named Woodward, who lacks authorization to hire prisoners. Afterward, Huey brings along Henry and several other prisoners to drop off a meat delivery at a bar. During their visit, they discover that Huey has a clandestine romance with the owner's sister, Carol. Meanwhile, at the lumber mill, a man named Larry sustains an injury to his hand, yet an elder named Floyd compels him to continue working. Eventually, Larry reaches his breaking point and severs the wooden rope, leading to a stack of timber nearly striking Huey. In retribution, Eddie calls for Larry to attend a phone call later that evening, likely as a pretext for inflicting torture. Henry finds himself perplexed by the circumstances and turns to fellow inmates to inquire about the concept of a phone call, yet receives no clarification. The following morning, during task allocation, Larry appears visibly drained and less healthy than usual. Senior trustee Dickey offers him the chance to take a break, but Huey insists that all prisoners must labor without exception. Consequently, Larry is tasked with cleaning death row alongside Henry and a few companions. Out of the blue, a prisoner named Walter launches an attack on Larry, insisting to see the warden or else he'll harm him. Henry intervenes to defuse the tension, stunning everyone by disclosing that he's the new warden. Initially skeptical, Walter outlines his requests, including yellow walls, a picture window, a shag rug, liquor, and a television like others possess. Henry pretends to comply, asking Walter to indicate where he wants the window, then promptly reconfines him once the task is completed. Later, Dickey escorts Henry to Warden Renfro's office. In their meeting, Henry reveals to Renfro that he's the incoming warden set to replace him. Henry admits to his undercover stint as a prisoner to comprehend the prison's dynamics and enact vital reforms. Upon assuming the warden role, Henry publicly reveals his true identity to all inmates and abolishes the use of the whip for punishment. Additionally, he commits to eradicating the trade of blood and ensuring equitable distribution of crops and livestock among all prisoners. At a later time, John Deach, head of the prison board, and Lillian, an aide to the governor, pay Henry a visit to extend him the role of leadership and emphasize the importance of upholding the nation's laws. John requests regular updates about prison affairs, while Lillian cautions Henry to tread carefully. Subsequently, Henry reaches out to Purcell, the former warden's assistant, seeking assistance with implementing reforms. He also queries about the injured inmate he encountered initially, but Purcell reveals that the prisoner was relocated to a hospital and subsequently to another correctional facility. After that, Henry tells Purcell to buy 12 pairs of sunglasses and acquire a phone as per his request. Subsequently, the inmates on death row receive sunglasses, bringing them joy as it marks their first time outside the prison in months. Henry then advocates for daily outdoor access for the guards, not just sporadic outings every few months. The next day, Henry summons Larry and requests him to act as his reliable informant, providing updates on prison occurrences. He also enlists Larry's support in eradicating the corrupt and abusive environment within the prison, a task to which Larry consents. Several days later, Henry and Dickey find themselves discussing the prison system indoors while rain pours outside. Henry senses they're keeping something from him, unsettling Dickey. Suddenly, a stranger approaches them, revealing the collapse of the prison roof and injuries among the inmates. Henry swiftly orders an evacuation and ambulance dispatch, but the prisoners refuse due to the inclement weather and distant location. Frustrated, Henry checks on the injured prisoners, only to discover the prison doctor's practice of charging them for medical care. Enraged, Henry promptly terminates the doctor's employment. The next day, Henry uncovers a concerning discrepancy: 300 cases of chili intended for feeding only 50 trusted inmates. He realizes each trustee could have around 20 cans daily, leaving other prisoners with insufficient food. Afterward, Woodward approaches Henry with a bribe. Aware of Woodward's mistreatment of prisoners and his responsibility for a roof lacking insurance that collapsed, Henry demands he construct a new roof at no cost. Woodward declines, prompting Henry to terminate their contract on the spot. As Woodward departs, he warns Henry of repercussions for his lack of cooperation with the community. Later, Henry updates Lillian on prisoners performing construction work in town and food intended for them diverted to the police. Taking swift action, Henry improves food quality and ensures equal distribution among prisoners, which pleases them but irks some trustees. While surveying the field one day, Henry notices oil spilled on the garden. He tracks a truck and uncovers the hidden hut where Huey and Carol hide. Investigating further, Henry finds a warehouse stocked with food for inmates, causing shortages. To address this, he tasks prisoners with moving the food and demolishing the huts, deemed illegal structures on prison grounds. After dismissing the dishonest accountant for permitting theft, Henry establishes an inmate council led by 3 trustees, Dickie, Eddie, and Floyd, to oversee purchasing. The next day, Lillian visits Henry and voices worries about his abrupt prison reforms. Cautioning him about potential disapproval from higher-ups, she advises him to tread carefully. Nonetheless, Henry disregards her caution and requests a new prison doctor, having terminated the previous one. Lillian pledges assistance and alerts him to an upcoming prison board session featuring a guest warden discussing prison reform. As Henry revokes the privileges of the trustees, they grow increasingly disgruntled. During a meeting with the inmate council, an elderly prisoner named Abraham interrupts, seeking a private conversation with Henry. Abraham discloses his lengthy incarceration, stretching back to before World War II, prompting Henry to realize Abraham's continued imprisonment despite his sentence ending 3 years prior. Abraham alleges that over 200 prisoners have been killed and buried in the prison field, recalling the precise locations where each was interred due to his involvement in crafting their coffins. Offering to reveal the burial sites, Abraham's offer is cut short by the arrival of the new doctor. Though Henry must depart, he assures Abraham they will resume their conversation later. The following day, as Henry leaves, Purcell summons Abraham under the guise of a medical appointment, leading to his torture by electrocution at the hands of Eddie and Huey. Henry participates in a gathering with the prison board, noticing their ire over his reforms, which dismantle their corrupt practices. He directly accuses John Deach, the board's leader, of scamming the prison with non-existent farm equipment insurance policies. Henry discerns that all involved benefit from the prison's operations, with the board showing no inclination to enhance inmates' lives. Departing the meeting incensed, Henry receives a caution from Lillian, warning of dismissal unless he engages in political maneuvering with the board. The next day, Henry wakes to the shocking sight of Abraham's lifeless body dangling from the warden's residence flagpole. Confronted by Dickie, Henry receives a caution about the consequences of his reform efforts, with a warning to halt before more fatalities occur. Yet, rather than relenting, Henry's resolve strengthens to eradicate corruption. He promptly commands the prisoners to excavate vast areas of land in search of the bodies Abraham mentioned. Despite their diligent efforts, days pass without any discovery of the deceased. One day, Lillian extends an invitation to Henry for a meeting, but the dynamics shift when he realizes she's accompanied by another prison board member and a senator. They propose resolving the prison boiler issue and erecting new barracks in exchange for Henry ceasing his search for the bodies. Reflecting on the request, Henry recognizes the potential implications of covering up multiple murders, a concern echoed by the senator who warns of potential legal repercussions. Despite Lillian's suggestion to prioritize the welfare of the living inmates, Henry remains steadfast in his belief that justice demands the discovery of the bodies. After several days of fruitless searching, Henry decides to alter the excavation site and assigns the prisoners to a new location. Eventually, they uncover several bodies interred within a coffin in the adjacent field. Meanwhile, Huey grows increasingly frustrated with Henry's actions and attempts to rally support against him. However, met with apathy, Huey opts to flee and extends an invitation to Eddie to join him, which Eddie declines. Later on, Henry uncovers that Huey was responsible for Abraham's death. prompting him to assemble a team to locate him in town. The group is split into teams to maximize coverage. While Henry and Larry investigate the area where Huey used to supply meat to Carol's shop, Larry conducts a thorough inspection armed with his gun. Suddenly, Huey emerges and shoots Larry, but shortly thereafter, Henry intervenes and fatally shoots Huey. Following the violent incident outside the prison, the board dismisses Henry from his position, and a hearing is convened regarding the exhumed bodies. During the proceedings, the board persists in denying the true origins of the bodies. External medical experts assert the difficulty in determining the cause of death for the remains discovered on the prison premises. When prompted for his perspective, Henry proposes that executing convicts after their trials would be a cost-effective alternative to incarceration at Wakefield. As Henry departs, Lillian attempts to persuade him to compromise, but he declines, citing his objection to the board members' endorsement of murder, a stance he cannot condone. Despite Lillian's assurances of support, Henry remains doubtful of her motives. In the final scene, as Henry gets ready to leave the prison, Dickie intercepts him and acknowledges that Henry had been correct all along. The other inmates respond by applauding and disregarding the new warden's welcoming address. They gather at the fence to bid farewell to their cherished former warden. The movie wraps up with the revelation that 2 years after Henry's departure, a group of 24 inmates, led by Dickie, initiated a lawsuit against Wakefield Prison. The court ruled the prison's treatment of prisoners unconstitutional and mandated reforms or potential closure. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell if you want to watch more videos like this. Thank you for watching and see you again soon. Take care.